Welcome to this week's episode of the Need to Heat podcast with Jake Lynch.
And Jonathan Mungle.
This week's episode is called Conversation in Moderation. Luckily, this week we get Jonathan joining us as kind of a guest host with yours truly, while Fernando is off on a business trip for about 2 months. I'm going to miss him. Everybody at Mindful Media will be missing him during that time, but obviously we're still in contact with him while he's getting stuff done for him. This week's episode is kind of special, especially with the fact that we have Jonathan on board today, and he's gracing us with his presence. Today we're going to be taking advantage of a mindful conversation topics list from thegoodtrade.com, where you can go and find these questions and plenty more. These questions that we're about to ask each other are things that we want you as the listeners to also take into consideration when it comes to your mindfulness health and things that make you feel better on a day-to-day basis. So without further ado, I'm going to ask Jonathan the first question. Both of us are going to answer this question, and we're going to keep going for as long as we want to, and give you a little bit of a taste of what it feels like to have these conversations in mindfulness. So the first question is pretty simple, but also very interesting for me. But I'll let Jonathan answer first. Which scent, mindfully, do you find the most soothing?
I definitely think we're starting off with a very interesting question, for sure. But whenever I think of scents, I think it goes back to my childhood. I visited my mom's side of the family a lot, and my mom's from the island of Trinidad and Tobago. And they have a lot of scents with like natural oils and things of that nature, where it's almost like, if you guys know the scent of Vicks, it's something very similar to that. And it's
I'm very familiar with Vicks, coming from a Hispanic family.
Yeah, so it's a weird scent because it's really strong and overpowering if you ever use it. But to me, that's just a scent that's very comforting, and it's a scent that I could find myself going back to and having really happy moments, just because I think I was most pure whenever I was a child, and it's always memories that I like to look back on.
Yeah, I would say mine has a lot to do with my childhood as well. The scent that I can distinctly remember is this. It's either a gardenia scent or a vanilla scent that my Aunt Dory wears, and she is the person that would give me usually the first hug whenever I go to a family function as a child. And whenever I'm around that or gardenias or vanilla anywhere, I'm just brought to this place of pure warmth. I'm brought to this place where I feel very comfortable. I'm very soothed, and it feels natural. It's something else. Very enjoyable. But yeah, I think that's a great question actually to ask, because it kind of, just picturing or thinking about the scent makes you feel better.
Yeah, no, I've never actually heard that question before, but I like it a lot. Whenever you said scent, it kind of reminded me of I feel like my house has a certain scent. When I go to my friend's house, it has a certain scent. The school I go to has a scent, and it's all different, but it's all grounding almost. It's bringing you back to the roots of whatever that relates to.
Very much so.
I'm going to ask a question, and this is also an interesting question, but it is, what is a language you love to listen to, even if you don't speak or understand it?
Wow. Yeah. So that's a great question. For me, coming back to the fact that I come from a Hispanic family, hearing Spanish everywhere, especially living in South Florida, it feels very familiar. I very much enjoy the mannerisms that a lot of people that speak Spanish have, whether it's talking with their hands, talking with their heads, talking with their body. It's a very, very emotional language, especially when it comes to Latin forms of the language. And in terms of languages that that make me kind of feel comfortable, I would say Spanish. But in terms of the most fun language to hear, I would say probably German, just based on how harsh it sounds and how close. Like if you were to read German next to English, how similar they are, but how different they sound.
Yeah, for me, I think we have the same opinion of like Spanish being very familiar since we are from Florida. But for me, something that at least a language that I really like listening to that I don't understand at all, and I don't understand Spanish at all either, except a few words, it would have to be like Mandarin or Russian for the
Ooh,
pure nature, because I feel like there's that whenever I hear those languages, it reminds me that there's still so much more to learn. And it kind of pushes me out of my comfort zone quite a lot because it's just reminding you of like all the different perspectives that we could listen to because we're limited to only knowing, well, the language that we know, really. And if whenever I hear all these different languages, either through television or on my phone, through like different social medias, I'm just like, oh, wow, there's like so much that you could I mean, we have our whole life to learn, and we'll never get to accomplish the amount of things that we have with the ability to learn.
yeah, actually, thinking just about this topic about languages, um, there's so many words in different languages that don't directly translate to English that describe feelings, that we could use so very often in our day-to-day conversations that we don't get to because we speak English, which has its limits, but also probably has words that other languages can't really emulate. That's the thing that languages do. They don't directly translate, and being able to be raised in that language definitely impacts you as a person. So very, very cheap, very interesting topics right off of the bat. But so our third question, which is a fun one again, I would think, is oceans or mountains and why?
For me, it's a really tough question because we live in Florida and we
Yeah.
live especially close to the East Coast, where the ocean is 5-10 minutes maximum from usually our like every movement to the main establishments we go to. So it's just so close. But then I grew up in Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh's basically a huge mountain of a terrain. So everywhere you go is just really hilly, and there's a bunch of tunnels that go through parts of the mountain. So it's like a tug between the two cities for me almost. But if I had to pick one, I would pick the ocean for the pure reason it's just like when I look at the ocean, we're so small in the grand scheme of everything, and it really allows you to like just see that. And I like looking at the ships on the horizon of the ocean, and I look at the ships and I'm like, oh wow, it's like when you stand next to a ship it's so big, but when you see it from afar it's so small, almost like the little analogy with like when you're on a plane people seem like ants.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, it's incredible that like such normal things in our lives give us so much perspective. I mean, for me, thinking about it on a surface level, I would prefer the mountains because when it comes to like what you're normally around, like for the ocean, as an example, when I'm normally around the ocean, it's easy to take that for granted, that I get to go to the beach 5 minutes away from my house growing up. And I actually grew to not like the sand as an excuse not to go to the ocean. So for me, the mountains were always that escape, from normalcy. The mountains were always in a in a different type of way connecting to nature, right? Because there's the juxtaposition between the blue and the green, the different types of life that we get to experience. But I always loved the green that the mountains represent and the amount of trees, and uh, the difference for me was always that oceans are near, but mountains were someplace I could go when I was already near the ocean. So these questions make me feel like we're learning things about it. Like it feels very, very intriguing.
Yeah, no, I definitely like this. Definitely a shout out to thegoodtrade.com
Yeah.
for these amazing questions. And I think that's kind of like a segue. You're just talking about like terrain and landscape. Kind of a good segue to the next question, which is describe the most captivating painting or artwork you've ever seen.
Wow. Wow. Well, a part of that question for me, um, in terms of captivating, well, that's kind of conflicting for me because my mom, in fact, is an artist and she's been painting my whole life. So I'm very tempted to talk about, you know, uh, all of the work she's done because I was very instrumental in like me as a kid thinking about art and me getting involved in abstract thinking, stuff like that. But I've always had an affinity for um, more realism than abstract. So thinking about things that I remember from art, I think of a lot of like Van Gogh, like A Starry Night, a lot of those paintings that though they have a very unique stroke style and aren't necessarily like picture copies of that field surrounded by those stars. You know, they're almost like how you imagine a field with stars to be. You know, it's not what you perceive, it's like what you want it to be. So I always floated towards those type of Van Gogh paintings where um, it was very surreal and very imaginative. Yeah, that's what I would put it. But
Yeah, for me, I've never actually been, I wasn't really exposed to like artwork or paintings from a very young age per se. I'd say, or at least I never was curious enough to explore it. But I was born in DC, and one of the things that, the very vivid memory I have from the short time that I lived there was I remember my grandparents used to take me on walks throughout the Capitol. And I would always remember looking at either the Lincoln Memorial or just rotundas of that nature. And I think I kind of loved architecture of that from that time. And I just find a lot of significance, and like I found myself asking questions at a very young age on like, I was like, why did this one guy have like a whole plot of land in a major city kind of in my head? Obviously not that advanced of a question back then, but it was always
yeah,
rattling in my head and just made me ask more questions. And I'm a person who loves asking questions and trying to find the answer to. So I like artworks that make me ask questions, such as architecture, and just many sculptures make me ask questions too. So yeah, I think I'm more of like a not so much canvas kind of art, which does make me ask questions too sometimes. But I'm a huge fan of sculptures and stuff like that.
yeah, the 3D. Yeah, definitely more tangible. Yeah, there's so much beauty to be found in the practical things that we use every day too. So our next question is probably gonna be pretty tricky for me, but do you remember the first novel you ever read? If so, what is it?
Huh. I was trying to think back to the first thing that I ever read. It was honestly probably Diary of the Wimpy Kid was the first book I got through the whole thing. I don't know if I considered it a novel because I remember I was sitting there maybe like second grade, third grade maybe, and I remember reading the whole thing in like the span of 2 days. I was like, oh my gosh, I finished a whole book in 2 days. This is amazing. But
Yeah.
now that I look back on it, it was like 70% pictures. But I remember reading Diary of the Wimpy Kid, and I remember being entertained. And then I went on to Harry Potter Sorcerer's Stone decks, and I was like, oh my gosh, it's taking forever.
Yeah, I mean, I uh, I really tried to avoid reading for the most part of my young childhood. Um, I remember I think it was fourth grade, and our teacher tried to get us to read. I don't know if you're familiar, but the Magic Treehouse, right? This time traveling book
Yeah,
series that I thought was really interesting because I liked history, but I couldn't. couldn't get myself to read them as a fourth grader. And then I think the first book I actually read all the way through because my grades were truly dependent on it was in sixth grade. Our teacher was very into young adult fiction. So we read Divergent. Divergent was the first book I read in middle school, sixth grade, all the way through, and it really opened my eyes to like how deeply a book could make you feel about characters. Because I was used to watching movies, and a couple of movies had made me cry at that point, but I remember some of the deeper subject areas of like Divergent in sixth grade. I'm sitting there reading with my mom, trying to finish my homework for this class where she asked us very in-depth questions about every chapter. And I just remember like those harder subjects meaning something to me, even though I couldn't picture directly what was happening, like seeing through my own eyes. So I think that was the first book, but other than that, I mean, I really tried. I really was not one interested in reading.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely in the same boat with you. The more pictures something has, the more likely I am to probably buy it.
Yeah.
What would you say your favorite thing about your personality is?
Oh, wow. I don't. They say it's like the hardest thing to compliment yourself. So I would say that's a tough question. Um, I guess I would say I try to get better. Like I'm not nobody is a refined person, right? Nobody comes into this crazy thing of life uh, as they're gonna end it, right? So I make plenty of mistakes as a human being, but trying to forgive myself and trying to learn from it, I think that's what I could be most proud of when it comes to life going forward. But I don't know if there's anything specific about me that that I would call my favorite. That seems a
Yeah,
little.
yeah, this is definitely my least favorite question so far. Just because I think it's hard to answer questions that's so personal about evaluating ourselves, most importantly. What I don't know what I would have to say. I just like to think that I try to, I think my actions, I try to speak through my actions as much as I can. So I'm pretty proud of that. I feel like I could justify a lot of my actions by the way I kind of operate. And if I don't, and if I can't justify it, then I'll probably be the first one to tell you that I probably shouldn't have done that. But yeah,
Oh
I
yeah,
like my actions.
I completely agree. I completely agree with you on that one, Jonathan. Wow, these are. I don't know how far we are into the episode yet, but this is fun so far. So the next one, interesting, very interesting. If you could have a fictional superhero for a best friend, who would it be?
Wow, this is rough. A fictional superhero for a
There's so
best.
many options.
Yeah, this is not easy. Who would it be? Wow, I'm kind of stuck in a little dilemma here. Um, if I could have any superhero, I might pick. Wow, I'm really stuck now. Shoot.
Yeah, I can go first if you want. I think ah, for me, just purely off of entertainment value, probably Iron Man. Just to be able to see what the 1% lives like. To see how like pure, because if you guys are familiar with the Marvel Cinematic Universe or with any of those comic books with Iron Man in it, they they can't even quantify his level of genius. So being able to see somebody that can really uh, solve any feasible problem, including time travel, that would be very cool for me. I mean, there's a long list of superheroes that I would love to meet if they were real. I would have picked you for Captain America, John. I
Yeah,
don't know. I'm
I was
surprised.
thinking Captain America in my head, but I'm a huge fan of Captain Marvel as well. The
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was gonna go on that track. Captain Marvel is who I think I'd pick, just because I feel like they're a really new character to the whole Marvel world. So I feel like I'd have a
Yeah.
lot to kind of explore and learn through Captain Marvel. And that was one of my favorite new releases. I didn't think it got enough credit, but it was definitely one of my favorite new releases in the Marvel world. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they just do such a good job with those movies that like I definitely, because the first movies came out when I think 2008 was the first, 2007, 2008 were the first Marvel movies. And they've done such a good job since that, kids our age really grew up with these superheroes, and they're very sentimental to us. So there's a long list of people that I could have chose. But Iron Man's probably a favorite.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that question a lot, actually. Um, what color would you choose to describe yourself?
Oh, wow. That's uh huh. Well, my favorite color is red, right? And typically associated with red is like a very, like it goes in both ways, very just strong feelings, either good feelings or bad feelings. Um, so I could say that there are times when red would, probably be accurate because I do feel things very strongly. Uh, but other than that, I mean, probably something lighter, like how about like a creamsicle orange?
I think that's
I
a
like I like a creamsicle orange, because it's not too strong all the time, but it's the perfect I would say accent to everything that is strong, like a creamsicle orange type, nice and sweet too, like a little yellow sun haze. Yeah, that's what I'm gonna go with.
yeah. This is a rough question again. I think I would go with my favorite color personally is orange. It's been my favorite color since I can remember. If I had to pick a color to represent me, it's gonna be two very different colors right now. The first two that come to my mind, it'd probably be like a yellow and a blue. Uh,
Yeah, yeah, I can see that.
I always try to my favorite thing. I have a quote, and I write it on everything that I possibly can, which is just be the change you see in the world. And I try to like live my life around that. So that's where like the yellow comes in. But the blue kind of just comes in is because as I said before, I try to like lead by action, and actions I think is I really don't associate actions with yellow. I kind of just see blue as a stronger color. So I think those are
Yeah,
the first two colors that kind of come to mind. But man, that's a rough question. All right,
yeah,
Jake, you want to end us off with one more question?
yeah. All right. So to close everything out, this is probably the best question so far in terms of really trying to get to know yourself. But our last question of the episode is: what is something you have accomplished as an adult? So since we're not technically adults yet, let's kind of change it to what is something that you could accomplish by the time that you're adult that would make you now proud?
Wow, that's a loaded question. Um, as an adult, uh, I guess I could speak in the present tense because I am young now. But
Yeah,
I feel like I feel like throughout my short time at Fort Lauderdale High, I've increasingly ramped up the expectations I have upon myself to deliver. So, as an adult, I'd really want to just try to, once I could look back and say I did everything in my power to try to create the most impact that I see in a positive way, I'm going to be content. But if I see myself not doing everything that I possibly could and try to like harm people, that'd be something that I'd be disappointed in myself, and I'd hold myself to a very bad standard, I think.
Yeah, I mean, for me to be proud, I think a big thing for me is I've always been very family oriented. So I think one of the first things that comes to mind is to have a successful family. You know, not start things too prematurely. Make sure that I do things the right way, and that I have a healthy relationship with essentially my life in general. At that point, you know, if I have a significant other or if I have a family, children, that type of thing, make sure that all of my relationships in life are healthy. I think that would make me proud. And second of all, to be able to educate people, and give people the ability not only to educate people, but to give people the ability to find information on their own. I think if I could just help a handful of people do that, you know, I would be proud. But if I could do more than that, I would, yeah, to use your word, content. I would be content with a handful. And if I could do more than that, if I could do dozens or hundreds, I'd be beyond proud with the use of time I've had. So,
Yeah. This website you stumbled across, Jake, is absolutely amazing. I feel like we've known each other for a while. I feel like I just learned quite a bit about you.
yeah, I would definitely say so. For those of you guys listening, essentially all the people that have founded this organization, Mindful Me, we're all close friends in real life. So this episode was something that I very much enjoyed, and getting to know more about Jonathan, that and given the fact that I already knew about Jonathan, so very enjoyable. Again, we miss Fernando. If he cares to contact us after this episode and let us know how he's doing. But other than that, I think there's a great episode of Need to Heed with Jake Lynch.
And Jonathan Mungle.
Yep, this episode, conversation and moderation, need to heed where the details make the big picture. Have a great week, everyone. Thank you.